Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on what time you're watching this video. So, here is what's going to be happening in this video today. For a college task, I have been assigned to make a multi-platform video slash audio because it has to be able to work on radio and obviously also work on the platform that I've chosen, which just so happens to be YouTube. And for this idea, I have decided to do an idea that I've had for a while, which was to interview delivery people who are working for the delivery apps. So I have managed to get a hold of two. Luckily, one of them is my friend Sean, who works for a company that you'll find out about later. And this is going to be the first interview you hear is someone who's been at it for a whopping 4 years, I believe, off the top of my head. And this is Beth. So enjoy. When did you start with Deliveroo?
About 4 years ago now.
Okay. Why did you choose Deliveroo over? Well, I'd like to say why did you choose Deliveroo over the other ones, but I think it was only Just Eat back then. So why did you choose Deliveroo specifically over Just Eat?
Just because it was like new, and then it was just something different, and they were offering. Like, it was more flexible and easier to get into. Like I looked at Uber Eats at the time and like Just Eat and stuff, but it just wasn't.
Just keep talking.
I'm mumbling.
No, my microphone's having issues.
Oh, okay. But yeah.
So obviously you've been doing this before the events of last year, which would be COVID, to put a name to it. What is the major difference between before the pandemic and now?
I think because it was so easy to join, there's definitely not as many orders as before, and then you're obviously having to clean more, which isn't a problem, but is more just respecting distances and things and just little tweaks that you wouldn't have done before. But it's now normal. But again, just there's so many drivers on the road now because it's so easy to join. There's not as many, so it depends what time of day and whether it's flexible before now. It's trying to find the right times to actually get orders.
Okay. So you're saying that there's a lot more people in here. Now, do you feel that's because there's not as much checks as there was? Like, when you started off, did you have to go through a check-in period before you started? Or was it just Deliveroo says yes and then you start that day?
Like, I done it online, and then I went to George Street for an intro day, and then literally started the next again day. So it is quite a quick process. As long as your background checks and things come around fine, which they're quite speedy with, it really doesn't take long at all. So I think just with everyone losing their jobs, wanting something extra, it's just very easy to sign up and then go do your day course, and then that's you on the road.
Now, you were saying earlier on that it is flexible hours, is why you chose Deliveroo.
Yeah.
Now, obviously it's flexible hours, so when it comes to it, you make your own hours for people who are watching that don't get that. But what were your hours specifically?
So I used to work for another company full time at the same time, but during the reason I went into it was that winter time I wouldn't get as many shifts. So it would be that I would work 5 days on and then 3 days off. So those 3 days off, I would try and get shifts with Deliveroo, or even if maybe I was like standby at home one day, which meant I couldn't really leave the house for work, but then I could go do Deliveroo just once the shift had finished because I was still at home. So it would vary, but normally 5-3, so I would work 3-5 off to do my other job and then go back.
Okay, so it was definitely a part-time job when you had, rather than anything else. Now, it being a part-time job, was there any, say, discounts or benefits to working Deliveroo?
Not really. There was nothing that you could work up or get kind of promotions or bonuses or anything like that. I guess with doing the same area and things, like the people in the shop would kind of get to know you a little bit. So you'd get like a free juice or whatever, which was quite nice. But I think that was more the restaurant side of it than actually Deliveroo, because obviously it wasn't them giving us it. But then because of COVID, that all kind of changed. But then we also got to know everyone a bit better with just going in and out, with us being the only ones to go in and out, in fact.
Hmm. So when it came to you doing your 5-3, was that mostly weekdays or was it weekends?
Well, it alternates. So with 5-3, I found that mm, I'd work like one weekend every month and a half for it to fully rotate through the week. So that's how it would constantly be changing. But like if I did have maybe an extra day off, or I was working an early shift, so I had my night time free, then I would try and always work the weekends because they're busier than during the week. So it's kind of pointless to do your Monday, Tuesday, because everybody gets their takeaway Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or certain times of the month when it's payday. And you know that at the end of the month everyone's got money, so they're going to get more takeaways, means you're going to get more orders. But through COVID, it's been a bit strange.
Now, when you are doing the weekends or whatever time a day that is for you, are you noticing any sort of like recurring themes? Like Saturday's a day where most people get chippies, or Sunday's a day where there's actually more pizzas coming out, or that kind of thing.
I think it's when folk order like a main meal at like 12 o'clock on a Sunday, because you can tell they're rough. Like, who else orders that type? Well, personally, myself, it might not be for everyone, but when I'm rough, I order like the weirdest stuff early in the afternoon, because that's probably the only time you can eat before the whole hangover hits. But you can totally tell when you go to the door whether they're hungover or not. It's just funny.
A lot of people answering the door slowly and not quite.
Yeah, like in their pajamas, girls with half their makeup on and their hair up, or just people are like.
You can smell the booze off them,
Yeah,
kind of
like
stuff.
it's just still there, or like mostly like families as well. You'll get them at a certain time ordering.
Yeah.
So more like maybe like 5, 6, and it'll be like kind of bigger bulks from the chippy or whatever, and you can always tell for like family orders and things like that, especially if they've got people over. Not so much more now with COVID, but like beforehand, like I think I'd done a delivery where it was so many pizzas, it took up like 2 big bags.
Mm-hmm.
And they came out and they're like, we're so sorry, because I had to carry this all by myself and do 2 runs back to the car just to give them their orders. But yeah, so there's a lot of big stuff as well as little ones.
Speaking of deliveries that you remember, what have you had a weird delivery? Like a weirdest delivery?
I guess the weirdest one would probably been like I had to go up to the mental hospital, and that was a bit odd.
Wait,
Because I don't think it wasn't for the staff.
you'd think there would be some sort of rule against that, but obviously not, I
Yeah, like
imagine.
it was the same for like schools and stuff as well. Like especially there was a few drop offs at the university, but they were just annoying because you had to do like 4 laps trying to find what building you needed. They're trying to call you, being like, "Oh, I'm just here," and I'm like, "I don't know where just here is." Like, I got lost so many times, and I was always having to phone people, be like, "Where do you live?" Because Google Maps is horrendous. Like, I think I downloaded like another app, and if you use like a different type of maps on your phone, and it got to the point I got a really good tip off someone where if you put the address but in like a real estate agent place, especially for new builds, it would then show you on a little map where it was to try find it.
That's a nice wee tip. To take it back to the mental hospital for a second, was there any checks that you had to go through for that, or was it just
No,
you
I
sort
just,
of
like,
knock on
pressed-
the door?
Yeah, like press the buzzer to get in, and they're like, they called them down, and I was like, oh, okay, you're not in any type of uniform, but yeah, and they just kind of got it odd. But it was just very odd, the situation. It's like walking into a hospital. It's just, you didn't feel like you were meant to be there. It was just very odd.
I can imagine. Yeah. Now, last question, and I'm going to thank you for your time before I ask it. So thank you. But what was the funniest delivery you've ever had to deal with?
There was this guy, right? So delivered the pizza, but with it being COVID, you have to leave it at the door and then step back for them to come get it. But this was at his back door because they'd requested for it to be delivered to the back door, not the front door. So delivered it to the back, knocked the door, walked away. And I think he was more paying attention to the fact that there's somebody standing at his back gate than what was in front of him, because he went flying over his delivery. Like, didn't even notice it was at his feet, and then just went. And I was kind of like, okay, I laughed. I really shouldn't have laughed, but I did laugh. And then I was like, do I ask him if he's okay, or do I just get in my car and go? Because it was awkward. Well, it wasn't awkward, but it was just funny. But I felt so bad because I laughed. I just couldn't help myself. And I was like, do I go make sure he's alright?
Was he okay?
Yeah, no, he was fine. I did ask him if he was okay, and he kind of started laughing as well. I think just realizing he should have maybe looked at his feet first,
Yeah.
with the way orders normally happen. So, but yeah, definitely not. But that was definitely funny.
I think we've all tripped over something at our front door
Oh,
first time.
yeah, definitely.
So that is all my questions. Thank you again,
No problem. It was a pleasure.
and goodbye.
So there was a very interesting interview by Beth there where she had a few hiccups with the man who tripped over the pizza that was left on the floor. Obviously, he turned out to be okay, but you never know. So to counteract that, of Beth doing this for 4 years and then continuing on and doing it through what was the pandemic of last year, I decided to interview my friend Sean, who only actually picked it up last year. And this is what he had to say about it. When did you start with Just Eat?
Oh, well, Just Eat, I started around like July 2020. Just because like it was I was like off because like a course I was doing and kind of went kaput around the time, obviously with the pandemic and whatnot. And the early beginnings are just everything kind of went to it just went downhill. So obviously, like I need some work to get some money to for to pay the bills and all that. So I looked around the sort of different options, and I started with Just Eat in July because there was a pretty
So you're
cheap
saying
option.
that obviously it was because of the pandemic that hit last year. Excuse me. So, but what made you choose Just Eat over, say, I'm going to drop some names here, your Deliveroos or your Uber Eats? And I think that's the major ones.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question because there's like two. I have two answers to this. Because one, Just Eat has like a lot of different local restaurants that can deliver to like a lot of different locations. So say like there's a chip shop nearby, and someone from Gilmerton orders it, and it's kind of like near my area, so I could just hop on my bike, go down to the chip shop nearby, and just ride my bike in there. Plus, I'm also in control of my schedule. Like a lot of Just Eat drivers, depending on like car and bikes and whatnot, are pretty much in control of their own schedule. So that's kind of appealing because I'm thinking of like restarting like a college career and whatnot. So it's a good balance to sort of like say like I start around like in the somewhere in the afternoon for lunch orders and whatnot, work my way up until 7-8 o'clock when dinner's options are starting to go through. And and then between and before that and afterwards, I got time to myself to just sort of like either kick it out or just study and just look for courses.
So you are mentioning that you were a student beforehand. What actual course were you on? Obviously, I know that, but for the people who are listening.
All right. I did a radio course beforehand, which was going quite well. We were in the last stages of said course, and the coronavirus pandemic happened, and we weren't able to go into the college classes. A lot of the work that was a lot more physical, and you had to go to different places, that went kaput. So we had to like work on like different like little stuff and whatnot. And yeah, that was quite the blow, just because obviously you had like different ideas on what to do afterwards in mind, and that kind of just went kaput. And then like afterwards of the sort of COVID-19 pandemic, it's been pretty weird and kind of bizarre just how things have just been going on, eh?
Yeah, it's been a weird year for a lot of us. Now, so I want to take you back a little bit.
Yeah.
You've chosen Just Eat. What do you actually have to do before starting with the company? Like, what are the checks? What's the waiting period between the checks? Can you start right away, or is there sort of a time delay between you can start?
Well, I remember I remember when I started, applying and whatnot. I had to wait a while just because, like, obviously, there's a lot of people working as Just Eat drivers at the moment. So I pretty much applied and had to wait for a little bit until, like, say, there was a opening, you know. And obviously they require if you're applying for a job, they require the classical CVs and previous experiences and whatnot. And also like just safety background, just like backgrounds and requirements. Like you're not reliable to steal anything. You're not going to be able to do this. Not going to be able to do that. If you're able to like drive a car or drive a bike and all that stuff. And I did have to wait a while for the application to both go through and then get accepted, just because of how many other drivers are out there doing the rounds. So I think it had to depend on like what opening was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but yeah, basically, I get what you're meaning there.
Mhm.
Now, you were saying earlier on that obviously the hours are what you make it, but what are your hours? What hours do you make traditionally?
Yeah. Well, I like to kind of mix it up, but the main ones I tend to do are either in the afternoon or the evening, early evening specifically. Like the afternoons are really good because that's when the lunch hours are kind of coming in, and like it's very nice. Like depending on the day, it can be quite lovely. So obviously the bike ride is a pretty good way to spend the day delivering a Greg's or something. And with the evenings, it'll kind of flip flop. Like sometimes I'll go for like an early evening, like say on a weekday, like a Monday or something, because it's kind of quiet. But then there are days where like a weekend is definitely like great, just because it's not like you get paid extra for doing all of the different rounds and whatnot. But it's just a sort of like active way to sort of like stay in shape, like just sort of like riding this bike to these different locations and just doing all and pick up all these different deliveries and whatnot. So those are sort of the two times I go for.
Okay. Now, this is not on the question sheet I gave you before, but
Mhm.
do you find any sort of difference between the days of the week, depending on, say, Monday's more of a Chinese day for most of Edinburgh, or is it the Tuesday's more a Chinese day, or is it closer to the end of the week? Obviously, you get more people, but is there a difference between, I'll say theme, is there a difference between the theme of food that you start delivering at that time?
All right. Well, like you say, is if I think of Wednesday, you kind of get like a couple of like Chinese options, just because like you'll probably get some people in the middle of the day that are like, all right, can we borrow to cook? Let's just order a Chinese or an Indian from down the road. And with a Friday and a Saturday, especially, those are like you kind of get like a buffet of different options. Chinese, Indian, or even a pizza from a chippy and whatever. Just different kinds of like options just available. I mean, I think interestingly, now you mentioned different dates. There was a while, like in the month of October, where every Tuesday, burritos, non-stop burritos. I don't know why. I couldn't really tell you who exactly was ordering burritos. It wasn't like even the same address. It was just like different addresses ordering different burritos. So like you say, there are like bizarre themes that do occur, and you kind of think about it once they're done. You're like, yeah, that was a weird moment where people just suddenly start ordering pizzas nonstop on a Saturday. you know?
That's definitely a weird thing to pick up on, especially burritos. You imagine that
Yeah.
burritos would be a very niche topic. Now,
Mhm.
back to Just Eat as a company.
Uh-huh.
Is there any actual like discounts or benefits you get from working for them?
Well, there's the occasional tip, like from a customer, which I know isn't really from the Just Eat company, but that's definitely a pretty cool benefit. Is because like depending on the performance of the customer you're working with, they'll give you like a tip if your performance is like upstanding, and also like you're essentially self-employed, so you don't really get a whole lot of like big benefits. You know what I mean? I think if you do get one benefit, you get a sort of like performance-based bonus if you do well and sort of keep up with the times and whatnot. But for the most part, you're self-employed, so you don't really get like a whole lot of like major stuff besides the performance-based bonus. But that's just mostly down to how you're able to do the performances more than anything.
Okay. So I'm going to skip my next question because my next question is about whether there's a certain amount of time for bonuses and benefits to kick in. But since you're saying it's only real tips, I'm going to swap it around a little bit and
All
say
right.
what did you ever get like a big tip from anyone?
Oh wow! All right. Um, yeah, I think I did. It was during the Burrito Tuesdays that we mentioned. There was I had to like write down to one of the where was it? I'm trying to remember where it was. It was essentially one of the college campuses I had to write down to. It was like I think it was Milton Road, I believe. So I had to like drive down there, and I got these like this order for like burritos, about four burritos, and I rode down to like to this college halls, Milton. Milton Road, sorry, and I opened when you get there, you knock on the door, you have to stand back for because of the COVID safety precautions, and this dude opens the door and there's a stink, if you know what a stink is,
Oh,
and everyone in there is just having a good time, you know. So one of them was like, "Oh, cool, man, thank you." So he takes the bag and like he extends his hand over and he gives me like this tip, and it was a fiver. I got like a fiver tip for delivering like these five burritos. So obviously those guys really needed those burritos. So obviously I wasn't really complaining because it's a £5 tip. And if you sort of like stood there the entire time, like, no, mate, I can't accept it. And then they was gonna be like, oh no, go on. So you're gonna have this sort of tug of war of like, no, thank you, please take it. No, thank you, please take it. You know, and
yeah.
that's and you don't really want to have a tug of war like wasting the hours on your deliveries. You
Now that sounds like a weird delivery, but what's the weirdest delivery that you've ever had to deal with?
know. Sorry, I would. It is. Yeah. So the weirdest delivery I had to do was I remember delivering some chips like somewhere in the Graceman area from a chippy, and I sort of like so I drove my bike down there and I get to this like this house, and I knock on the door, and I think the order was like I think the order was a pizza order. So I stand there, I wait for a little bit, and and in the right corner of my eye I see someone like opening the window, and he's like oddly positioned, you know, like he's trying to open it without like being seen almost. He opens it and he's leaning forward, and he's leaning forward, and there's no shirt on him, and he's like also being trying to be super discreet as possible. And he's like, "Yeah, mate, come here, give me the pizza, and and whatnot." And I kind of realized that because the way he was like positioning himself, that guy was naked,
Okay.
which was a weird one. So he's awkwardly positioning himself to sort of make sure that you don't see anything, except for the upper chest area. So I go over to him, I give him his pizza, he says thank you, shuts the window, turns around, and I kind of noticed he was naked because I you know just got mooned, big moon there, essentially. So obviously I kind of went back and just sort of like drove away like nothing happened. But it's definitely one of the stranger deliveries I made, which I know is not like the superest of weird deliveries, but it's still quite an odd occurrence to sort of have.
It definitely sounds like an odd occurrence.
Mhm.
And I'm going to thank you for your time to begin with.
No
And
worries, mate.
then for my final question, that
Mhm.
was quite a funny delivery, but what's the funniest delivery?
Oh, this might it might not only is it the funniest, it's honestly my favorite. I had to deliver an Indian meal to a hotel. I think there was someone staying up there who I think was coming from some other country. So obviously they were there to sort of like shack up to sort of like for the 2 week period of like the COVID stuff and whatnot.
Hmm.
And so they ordered this person ordered an Indian. So I go down there, knock on the door for it, and I hear like a voice on the other end of the door being like, "Ah, just a sec," like a very like normal voice. And suddenly the door opens and a puppet appears out of nowhere. And so, and this puppet has this like this squeaky voice, and the puppet's like, "Hey, is that my delivery?" And I'm like, "Yeah, are you so and so?" And he's like, "Yes." That's my handler. I'm just gonna just put it on the floor and we'll take it. So I put it on the floor, and it was quite a weirdly wonderful conversation, just
Hmm.
because the guy controlling the puppet was really polite, and obviously the two of them had a bit of a back and forth that was kind of entertaining. So the Indian gets taken in. I get like a £1 tip. I go off on my way, and it was one of the better deliveries I did, just because it's not really funny just because, like, there's a puppet there and you're having a conversation with a puppet, but the genuine sort of like aura that like that was there was just quite pleasant. So I imagine that the person there was some sort of puppeteer for some sort of show or something. But either way, it was quite a fun little experience.
That sounds weird and fun all in the same thing.
Oh, for sure. Like it's a lot less weird than seeing like a naked guy like taking your order, and it's all the more pleasant just because you got a nice little show out of it. And obviously, I think the guy controlling the puppet was having some fun of it too, just because you're stuck in there for like 2 weeks and you might as well do something that's entertaining, you know.
Yeah. So thank you again. I'm going to thank you a second time for answering my questions.
No worries, man. Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. And thank you and bye-bye. Thank you again for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope my editing's made it actually a good video to watch, because I'll be honest, I did spend a lot of my time fighting with Premiere Pro. But thank you again for watching. Please leave a comment or try and engage with me as much as you can, depending on whether it's on the post or on the actual video. And thank you and goodbye.